Hello and welcome to the Top Custom Hearthstone Cards of the Week, the show where we look at some fan-made cards from the r/custom Hearthstone subreddit. I'm starting to stream Monday through Thursday on Twitch, so if you want to follow and check out the stream, info is in the description. First up is Weapon Bag, 2-mana warrior spell that equips a random weapon. I have to say, one of my favorite RNG cards has to be Molten Blade. It takes advantage of the weapon pool variety, such as the unique legendary weapons, and allows the user to gauge whether the value of that turn's weapon is worth spending the mana. If you don't like the weapon, you can always just wait another turn and re-roll for something else. While it's just better to have a consistently good weapon in your deck, Molten Blade shows how simply waiting another turn to re-roll, while it may be slow, is inexpensive and can help you get the most value out of the card. So yeah, Weapon Bag also has a reroll effect, but it also equips a random weapon for only 2 mana and allows you to reroll for the same cost multiple times in a turn with Echo. This card is basically a faster and cheaper Molten Blade with a little bit more of an unknown risk. Looking at this fancy chart, you can see that at 2 mana there are 7 weapons that cost 2 or less mana and 27 that cost more than 2 mana. This means on your first use of the card, 27 out of the total 34 weapons in the game will get you a weapon worth more than 2 mana. My point is, the randomness of this weapon does not balance the fact that you're going to likely get a weapon worth more than you're paying for with this card. I've now blown the entire budget of this episode on Excel charts. So yes, the randomness, much like the randomness of Molten Blade, is part of the reason that this card should be a little bit cheaper than any old weapon you'd put in your deck. And it's true that if you get unlucky with the first weapon, the second time you use this card, its cost becomes much more likely to match up with the weapon value. But I think this card could easily be abused by aggro. To balance this card, changing the cost would be stupid. A 3-mana random weapon spell with Echo would fall to the same fate as Fiery War Axe. I think a better version of this card would be 2-mana Echo, equip a random weapon with 1 durability. There are cards that would work well with this change like Gorehowl, ones that wouldn't really be affected like a Luneth, cards that would just be balanced, and ones that already suck, like Icebreaker. Sometimes you could buff this new weapon to get more swings, and other times you could just use it for immediate damage. I found that the average weapon is able to deal 2.4 damage, with the outliers being Gorehowl and of course 0 attack weapons. So even if aggro used this, they're likely going to have to spend 2 to 6 mana just to get 3 to 5 damage. But unless you're going for lethal or buffing Grave Shambler, playing this 3 or more times isn't going to be great value. So while you probably won't want to reroll the weapon a bunch, at least now the first cast of this card on turn 2 isn't going to win the player the game. You'll have to let me know if I fixed this card didn't do enough, or if I nerfed it into oblivion. Weapon Bag is definitely a fun take on all the random weapons in the game, and it gives the player a unique opportunity to use the weapons that they wouldn't normally use. Up next is the Zodiac Thief. 7-mana 7/7 rogue legendary with the battle cry, steal your next fatigue card as a 0-cost spell. So basically this new steal mechanic works like this. You're in fatigue, you take 1 damage, 2 damage, 3, 4, the next draw you're going to take 5 damage. You play the Zodiac Thief, and when you draw, instead of taking the 5 damage, you get a 0-cost spell that deals 5 damage. It's a cheap and powerful spell that also prevents you from taking fatigue damage. After you take this token, the fatigue continues as normal, and you'll take 6 damage the next turn. The Zodiac Thief is obviously designed for a fatigue rogue. This card doesn't really have any value unless you can consistently get into fatigue. Anytime you mention a cheap damaging spell for rogue, you have to mention a Miracle Rogue, Gadget Sand Malagos deck. You could cycle through your deck quickly, get into some fatigue, play the Zodiac Thief, and combo the token and cheap spells with Malagos to kill your opponent's face. In addition, you could also try to play multiple Zodiac Thieves. Whether just bouncing the minion to get its battle cry or playing cheaper versions of the card, it's possible to get a couple fatigue draws in a row that can net you a decent amount of damage while preventing yourself from taking it. In terms of playability, this card needs a deck built around it. It's basically a dead card in your hand until you get into fatigue, where it will only net you a little bit of damage unless you have other cards to combo with it. It's clunky, slow, expensive for its battle cry, and a tough requirement, but it's a really powerful effect. Now that Coldlight Oracle has rotated out into the Hall of Fame, rogues can't bring their opponents into fatigue with them. They can't just survive through fatigue while their opponent dies from it. I think if this deck were to work, it would need some other way of getting multiple Zodiacs. Some way where the user could acquire at least 3 turns of getting fatigue tokens and then combo it with Malagos to kill their opponent. I think what made Fatigue Rogue, or at least certain versions of the deck, so annoying to play against was how quickly they could end the game. With the Zodiac Thief, not only does it allow for opponents to still draw at their own pace, but it makes Fatigue Rogue focus more on value and their own health at the end of the game. This new deck asks interesting questions like, when's the best time to start playing Zodiac Thieves? How many spells and at what damage am I going to need to win? And do I need to play Zodiac Thief this turn so I don't die? With this type of deck, it would need pinpoint balancing to ensure it's not too fast and users couldn't get too many Zodiacs reliably, but it would be a really great way for Fatigue Rogue to come back. Next up we have Rebellious Flame, 2 mana 3/2 elemental for mage that reads, after you play a minion, this becomes a spell. And this spell also costs 2 mana, deals 3 damage, and after you play a spell, this turns back into the minion version. This card is kind of like those swapping stat minions or a choose one spell, but it's much more interesting in how it interacts with what cards you play. Starting as a 2 mana 3/2, this is a decent 2-drop on curve, but more importantly, as an elemental, you may want to play this as a minion in order to set up for an elemental play next turn. Likewise, playing a Firefly on turn 1 lets you use the spell form of this card to clear a powerful enemy 1 or 2-drop. Sequencing with this card would be important. How you end your turn with Rebellious Flame is almost as important as the order on the turn you play this card. Setting up your next turn with a minion or spell might require you to make a different decision in the order you play your cards or the cards you choose to play to get the desired version from this card. It's simultaneously a flexible card, but it costs playing the right cards in the right order in order to get this value. I think if there's any deck for this type of card that relies on equal parts spells and minions to gain this powerful flexibility, it's Elemental Mage. Now in terms of this individual card, the 3 damage is almost always going to be better. Being able to deal 3 damage is like giving this 3/2 charge, and the ability to increase its attack with spell damage and go through taunts. For this reason, I think the card would mainly see play as a spell, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Most choose one cards have a more powerful option. You want to save the card for when you can get 7/7 worth of stats from it, but sometimes getting a 3/2 out on the board earlier is just better. I think if this card was put in the game, a lot of the time you'd see Rebellious Flame as a spell, but when it is used as a 3/2, it just shows that the flexibility of this card could give the user a better chance of winning the game. Really cool design and interaction. I think it's great how the card might not be super powerful in its stats, but the flexibility and anti-aggro capabilities is a reason to put it into an elemental mage deck. Next up is Vampire Bat, 2 mana 3/1 beast for hunter that has lifesteal and a battle cry that gives your hero lifesteal this turn. So the battle cry means during your turn, any damage you deal, your hero power, or swinging any weapons will also heal your hero. The minion itself, 2 mana for 4 stats and lifesteal, may seem a bit overpowered, but making it a 3/1 really emphasizes that this card is meant mainly to heal. 1 health minions usually don't survive on the board, but if Vampire Bat can deal 3 damage into a minion, heal your hero for 3, and maybe a little bit more heal from its battle cry, then it's a great 2-drop. With the inclusion of the new expansions Beasts and Build-A-Beast, the pool of minions now has Rush and more lifesteal. You can now craft beasts to give you long-term protection and heal to help survive against aggro. This has shown that to make a slower hunter deck, you don't necessarily need big and powerful minions, more consistent draw, or OTK combos. By just giving hunter more heal to counter aggro, it's opened up the opportunity to try so many other types of hunter decks, whereas in previous expansions they didn't even have a chance. Not saying that Control Hunter is the best way to play Hunter, but I think by giving Hunter a way to survive against aggressive opponents, it opens up the door for so many other playstyle options. Deathstalker Rexar is great at this, but you have to draw the hero card early enough to survive. I think printing some other heal cards could really open up even more decks for Hunter, and Vampire Bat, still in the flavor of Hunter, does that perfectly. And last up is Willing Test Subject, 3 mana 1/5 neutral with charge, and when this minion triggers a secret, add a copy of that secret to your hand. So this card is the ultimate secret tester. Upon playing it or attacking with it, you won't have to spend a lot of mana to test most secrets. It survives against basically all hunter secrets. Playing this into Explosive Rune only deals 1 damage to your hero, it works well against paladin secrets, and rogue too. Now, you can't test all the secrets with this card, but if you don't trigger any secrets with your first turn using Test Subject, then you probably have a good idea of what secret it might be. Now, the second part of this card is getting the secret that you trigger, and this makes for some interesting gameplay. Yes, you'll get a secret, and most likely a good one since your opponent is choosing to play it, but just like when you mana bind your opponent's secret, everyone now knows what secret you're gonna play. Maybe if you're the same class, you can trick your opponent with a secret swap, or if you get multiple secrets, you can choose to play one and make your opponent guess. Either way, the secrets you play from Willing Test Subjects aren't going to be as strong because both players know which one it is and it's not really a secret. There is an issue with a high health charge minion for Inner Fire Priest, but I think if you just slap on cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers, it will be fine. I think between Chief Inspector and this card, the Hamster is the cheaper and more flexible option, so it would probably be used in decks teching against Spell Hunter and Tempo Mage. Sometimes it is really better just to get rid of all the secrets, but I think Hamster is a more flexible tech card that could also be good against opponents who don't use secrets. Now it's time for your card submissions. Coincidentally, Bohab the Warrior sent that last card, Willing Test Subject, which I actually saw first on the r/customhearthstone subreddit. So if you make any cards, you can send them over to my Twitter or email, but also make sure to post them to r/customhearthstone to get some feedback from the community there. Luke sent in Shadow Singer. It's a great minion to combo with Sap, either on a powerful enemy minion or to return one of your own minions. But playing this card with Vanish could be a mistake. From Tim, we have Chronoformer, a minion where when you use your hero power, it evolves. One day, my son, you will become a 10 mana 6/6. Custom Service submitted Shady Negotiator. If this kills a minion you have in your deck, you draw it. Finally, a tech card for mirror matchups. And last, Corey submitted Chainblade. It encourages weapon hand buffing, weapon buffing, but I think if you lowered the mana by 2, maybe buffed the attack a bit, removed the card text, there we go. There we go. That's the perfect weapon. That is all for the top custom Hearthstone cards of the week. I'm streaming Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so feel free to stop on by. You can check out the playlist for this series here, or my newest video on humorous cards. But until next time, ta-ta.
That's nice.